This one's not very good, is it?
You know, I have mixed feelings with Yellowstone. We were just talking. Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't necessarily
like you said, they're doing more than us.
Yeah, I don't like dumping on anybody because once again, they've invested the money. They're putting stuff out.
I put paper in the
yeah, they're doing more than I'm doing. So sometimes I feel bad about it if I don't like it, but that's the thing with palates. Everybody's palate's different.
So you gotta tell it how it is.
Yeah, and I've had a few. I've had this Yellowstone 101. Excuse me, 9 label. Yeah, I've had this for, gosh, maybe 10 years. And I didn't mind it. So the thing with Yellowstone, right? So they source their whiskey. So once again, they're an NDP.
The way that you can tell that on the bottle is if it reads something like bottled and aged in Kentucky, doesn't narrow it down that much. Bottled for a Limestone Branch Distillery, Lebanon, Kentucky. Now, there's nothing wrong with a non-distilling producer, NDP. In fact, some of our very favorites, like Lasso Motel or the longest time, Redwood Empire. Yeah. They source their whiskey.
Redwood Empire is a little different.
I mean, even in their inception, they had quite a bit of their own juice in it.
Correct. So, but take like a Smoke Wagon where it comes from.
Where it's entirely.
Right. So, Lasso Motel is mostly Green River. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't know where they're getting, because on the back of the bottle it doesn't tell you where they're getting their bourbon from. It just, by law, it just has to be the state that it was distilled in. We bought this just sort of on a whim.
Because generally, I like rum.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see a rum cask finish. Now, there are not a lot of rum cask finished bourbons that are impressive.
No, and we've talked about this before, and that's one of the things about bourbon and rum cask. For whatever reason, I could be the odd man out with this idea in my head, but we've had a High West finished in rum barrels. This is finished in rum barrels. We might have some other stuff around here finished in rum barrels, but for bourbon, for me, it doesn't really absorb, and I think it's because the bourbon's so sweet anyway, that when you're dumping something sweet into a sweet rum barrel, it's almost like the sweet and sweet, you get nothing out of it.
Whereas if you dump bourbon or rye whiskey in, say, a port barrel,
correct,
you get that deep, dark, complex fruit note.
Correct. Or you take like a rye whiskey, which is super, bright and spicy, and you put that in rum barrels.
That could be something.
And then and you get that extra sweetness to counteract all that. So, we bought this. It wasn't super expensive.
What was it, 30?
I think something 30, 35, but we wanted to give it a try. So they've got a bunch of stuff for, years I passed on anything Yellowstone.
They do have a lot of offerings.
Yeah, they do. And they've got some store picks and things like that.
Let's try it.
We wanted to try it, so we tried it. Now we're going to try it again and see if it's changed in the last couple of weeks. Once again, we don't know where they're getting it from, where they're sourcing their whiskey from. It's obviously out of Kentucky. So you can kind of narrow it down. It could be, a Heaven Hill product. It could be I don't think it's a Bardstown product. I don't think it's a Green River product. But it just, like I said to me, and this is the problem I had with it when we had it a couple weeks ago. It's just, there's just, even at 100 proof, there's just not a whole lot going on, right? I mean, I get a little nuttiness, like a peanut shell almost nuttiness to it, which leads me to believe it could be a Heaven Hill or a Barton 1792
could be
that they're sourcing from.
But it's mostly cherry.
Yeah, I'm just picking up on like peanut shells and almost like a slight little Play-Doh note, if anything.
You've identified that Play-Doh note before, a clayish note. What do you think causes that?
That's a good question. I'm a Gen Xer, so we grew up playing with Play-Doh. So that's one of those notes that.
Because I spell it too. It's just a dull note that occasionally appears in.
Yeah, it's a flat.
Whiskeys that you and I aren't terribly
It's a flat note. Yeah.
I wonder if that comes from the flavors not blending all that well together.
I don't know.
I wonder if that's what happens when flavors.
You look at the color on that. I mean, it's super light for
100 proof.
For 100 proof, you know.
And for being finished in rum casks.
But there is a lot of sweetness now that it's sitting here opening up a little bit, right? Super sweet.
I think the sweetness is what's wiping out a lot of the notes on the nose.
You know, I can get a little almost like a sweet like muted pineapple-y note to it. It was just maybe the tropicalness from the rum.
Could be. Then again, a rum cask finish doesn't specify where the rum comes from.
No,
and that could be anything.
It could be anything, right?
That's the issue. That's the issue with rum more generally, and that's the issue with rum cask finishes, as you've articulated. There's no rules when it comes to rum.
There's no rules.
Which means on the shelf you can have a Pusser's rum, which is pretty good, or Smith and Cross, for example, which I'm very fond of. Or you can have what's a really bad rum. Captain Morgan.
Just pick any
Admiral Nelson.
Any shit rum that's out there. If it's $15 for a 175.
And it comes with a handle so you minimize the time
plastic bottle, you got a problem. All right, let's give it a try. Maybe it got better. Who knows?
It's a little better.
Okay. So I will say this. So I'm definitely picking up on the nuttiness now, where I didn't pick up on it before. So I'm thinking it's going to be a Heaven Hill or a Barton 1792, which is fine.
But
there's something about how sweet it is with the nuttiness that it doesn't mesh for me. Like so with like a Larceny, especially the old Larceny barrel proofs, right? Where they were like, chocolate and peanuts.
Yes.
Those work well. At least in my head, because I'm a fat kid. But peanut-y,
peanut-ish,
peanut shelly with like tropical notes, like it just, like I said, I don't mean to shit on it.
Let me put it this way.
It just doesn't really work for me.
Let me put it this way. Do you think of peanut butter when you're in the Caribbean?
No, I've only been in the Caribbean once.
More times than me.
And I was not eating peanut butter.
You weren't fiending for peanut butter and jelly?
Or chocolate. It was too damn hot. Yeah, it just, like I said, this might be good for some people. Before we started talking, we found this. It took like 10 minutes because I didn't know where the hell it was. And because I haven't had this in probably 10 years, and I just took just a tiny nip out of it. It's still very, very nutty.
So Barton 1792.
That's or Heaven Hill. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, they're just. And I had maybe 3 or 4 different offerings from these guys, and for my palate, it just sort of doesn't work. I love the fact that they're trying stuff. They're trying the different finishes.
I appreciate that it's at a decent proof too.
Yeah,
sitting at 100. That's
100
nice.
proof. And that's the fun thing about whiskey, right? Especially with bourbon, is that unlike a super a nice old Scotch that you're gonna drop $100 on a bottle that you may or may not like. The nice thing with this is that for a $30-ish, $35 bottle,
experiment with it.
Yeah, give it a try. See, maybe your palate's. I mean, everybody's palate's different.
Put it this way: if you like 1792 a lot, if you like Heaven Hill products, if you like that, nutty,
and I do. I mean, we've got a ton of 1792.
Yes, you do.
Obviously, with Heaven Hill, you got Heaven Hill, McKenna.
But notably, it's not your go-to.
Yeah, some of the 1792 stuff, if it was a little easier to find, I would probably sit more often.
Sure.
Especially like the bottled and bonds and the things like that. The full proofs, I mean, they have a great barrel program doing store picks. So a lot of people can find, store picks of 1792 stuff, which
I believe the prices have been coming down on them as well.
yeah, it's I think they're sub 60-ish.
Industry wide.
Yeah, the whole.
I remember when the full proof was north of 70.
Yeah, well, it's all come down. It's all come down now. So yeah, going back to it, it's
fine.
It's fine. It's
I'm not spitting it out, so it's not terribly offensive like some of the representatives on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, just nutty and sweet. So, and a lot of times when you see like, rum cask finish, you're thinking, your brain automatically goes to rum.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, especially with bourbon, it's just going to offer a little extra sweetness, maybe a little bit of tropicalness to it, but
how long do they have to leave it when it says finished in?
It's up to the distillery.
So it could be a second and that would count?
Yep, 100%. You could literally put it in secondary, like let's say that one right there is a rum barrel. I could put 53 gallons of bourbon in there, let it sit for a minute or two, and then dump it, or I could let it sit for a year. On the label, it just says, rum barrel finished. It's the same rules with bourbon, right? Bourbon doesn't tell you how long it has to be in the barrel. I mean, obviously, to be a Kentucky straight or a straight bourbon, they have rules for that. But if we have 53 gallons of new make, put it in a new charred oak barrel for a minute, and then dumped it, technically that's bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nobody would buy it.
And then if we dumped it again, we could call it finished bourbon if we put it in like a used port cask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The 4 minute whiskey, no one would buy it because it'd be awful.
Yeah, it'd be just new make. And a lot of bourbon drinkers don't want to drink new make. We like it because it's fun to see where it starts at. But
it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
But drinking it on its own, I mean, even though that was what our ancestors did for a long, long time. For a long time, new make was all they had till the accidental discovery of the barrel aging process, which according to conflicting historical accounts was either discovered by the Irish, the Scottish, or the Americans.
Yeah. Well, at least the oak barrels, that was 100% here in America. That's why it was so important in Kentucky.
Indeed.
Because they just white oak trees grow everywhere there. And, the interesting part about barrels, and we're getting off subject and we'll be done in a second, but the interesting thing is because they've always had barrels.
Yeah.
Right. It just makes stuff easy to transport. But
there was probably one gentleman
who figured out, let's burn the inside of those barrels before we put our distillate in there.
Probably a gentleman who was well acquainted with charcoal grilling or
barbecue. Who knows? I'll have to look that up.
Probably in that book you have on your show.
I'm sure I've got a few of them here. Yeah, so I mean,
it's fine. If you like Yellowstone, it's worth trying because it's $30.
Yeah. Try something different. If you're only buying the normal Yellowstone, you see the rum finish, give it a shot and see if you like it.
But you and I weren't very impressed.
Yeah, at least for this household, the rum finish it just fell a little flat, but said for $35 if you see it and you want to try something different, give her a shot.
Cut
my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing. Don't give a fuck if I cut my arm bleeding. Anyway, that's stupid. I'm a dumbass. Yeah, this smells like fucking Barton 1792.